Welcome to Talking Science, where we dive into stories making headlines in the world of science and space. I'm Matt Miller. Dr. Brad Tucker is here. Brad, what a year 2021 has been.
Yeah, look, I'm trying to think about what happened at the beginning of the year, and it's like, holy crap, that was the beginning of the year. I know COVID has distorted time in a way that shows and proves Einstein's general relativity, but also it's because so much has happened, and I think that's the exciting thing that we'll get to see today is just all the different discoveries from human spaceflight and travel to black holes and everything in between, and especially what we're doing here in Australia. And I think that's kind of the great thing to reflect back on what his year has been, because there has been a lot of stuff, and then to think about what's going to even happen next year. I think every year it just becomes more and more and more and more. And, you know, when you dig through a year of highlights, you really appreciate that.
Yeah, you absolutely do. Well, we've put our heads together and come up with a top 10 list of the biggest stories of the year. And I'm going to roll them through just like a good old-fashioned clip show right after the opener.
This is Trek Zone's Talkin' Science.
Southern Launch Australia has been awarded the country's first launch licence.
Yeah, we talked about it last year when they had their first launch. It is a big step for Australia. And this is one of those things a few years ago, even at the beginning of the space agency a few years ago, that launching rockets and that ability was not going to necessarily be a big part of the Australian landscape, at least so we thought. And now that not only are there multiple groups looking at this, but now, as you said, that first launch license exists. This is a very interesting way of growing the industry in space here.
We're hearing reports that the space junk map is tracking 200 ticking time bombs just days after Crew 2 had a close encounter of the debris kind on its way to the International Space Station.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the work happening in space junk area to clean it up with lasers or these refueling satellites. And this really just goes to show it is a risk. This is not something we're just saying, but it's a hypothetical. A map led by Mariba Jha out of University of Texas, and a good friend of mine, has been using his Astrea graph maps to essentially try to figure out where are the really hazardous pieces. We know there's a ton, but where are the big ones? Where are they in terms of their position in orbit? Because if you're by yourself, you will be less of a risk than in a very crowded area or orbit. And how many are likely to produce those critical chain reactions? Because that's the worry, as ones break apart, crash in the others. And his team has found there's essentially 200 really hazardous pieces of space junk out there. And in the truest sense, there is no control. They're just flying around and pose a very real risk. And as you said, something that happened over the weekend with SpaceX Crew 2.
Scientists have used the first detailed cross-section of a galaxy that's pretty similar to ours to work out that we're not unusual.
This has always been one of the interesting aspects of our Milky Way. We see two distinct parts of what we call the disk, the thin disk, and essentially the outer disk. And the question has been that is the thin disk and this outer thick disk, are we unique in having it, and also how it formed, or how we at least believed it formed? When we look at other galaxies, not necessarily, we weren't being able to see as much detail as obviously as we can in our Milky Way. So the question was, is our formation and is our structure unique, or is it just because that we've had a closer up look and that galaxies like the Milky Way are actually more normal? That's normally how they're formed or how they're set up. And this new study of looking at a nearby galaxy in exquisite detail has shown that, yes, the Milky Way is fairly normal as what we think in terms of how it's come together.
Brad, this one's really interesting. We've got Glenn Nagel and Professor David Flannery coming up on today's live stream, talking about the mission in particular. Glenn from Tidbinbilla, our good friend, talking about the communication of this rover, this mission. It's a busy time for them around the red planet. So many missions happening, so much stuff happening. As he calls it, it's the traffic jam of the solar system.
It really is. And it's not just as, and I know Glenn will talk about this, but it's not just as straightforward as pointing this big radio telescope and it working. You obviously have multiple probes there. And in addition to the already 6 or 8 existing ones as well around Mars, plus the rovers on Mars and the other missions on Mars. So getting the right frequency, the right mission, and the right download link is quite critical. There was always a story back in Apollo 13 that the lunar module and the stage 2 of the rocket broadcasted on the same frequency. And so this was always fine because the lunar module was supposed to only be used days later. Of course, in Apollo 13, that didn't happen that way. And the workers at Honeysuckle Creek and Tidbinbilla had to separate the frequency so they could hear what's going on in the lunar module around the noise of that stage 2 rocket. So it is not just a walk in the park. You don't just, turn on the channel and click, click, click. I got my Mars receiver.
NASA's gearing up for the launch of their DART mission this week. As you wrote for The Guardian, we can't be expecting Ben Affleck and Bruce Willis to be on standby and I forget her name, but, staring at those screens longingly. So what's DART hoping to prove?
Don't forget Steve Buscemi here.
Oh, yes, of
the
course.
Unsung hero. No, look, so DART is a science fiction-y sounding mission, but it really is a response to how do we deal with a potentially hazardous asteroid. And so DART will, called the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, will launch a craft that will essentially try and slam in to a small asteroid. So the system Didymos has 2A and B, and it'll crash into the smaller one, seeing how much, just using essentially sheer impact, we can nudge an asteroid. Because the idea is if you can nudge an asteroid far away from Earth enough, you don't have to worry about it. Shifting it even far away enough can mean that it can fly right by the Earth if you do it far away enough. So knowing how much we can shift it, how much we can impact the orbit will tell us what we would need to do in the unfortunate and unlikely event we need to.
We've been spotting exoplanets around the Milky Way for a little while now, but for the first time, we've seen one in another galaxy.
Yeah, look, and this has been one of the exciting things because I was explaining this to someone this morning. They're like, well, shouldn't we know that there's planets in other galaxies? And it's like, well, yeah, but this confirms we're not crazy, right? This is the exciting thing, that if indeed this is a real one, and we'll talk about why in a second, we've never believed that our Milky Way is unique, that there shouldn't be other planets in other galaxies. But the ability to do that has always been one that we've just never thought it would be that possible. And I always like to reflect, the very first planet around another star was found in 92. And then the real first good one was in 95. And those are the sorts of things where in only a generation we've gone again from, well, we thought there should be planets around all the stars, to, oh yeah, now we know them. And now we find all these different types and versions and ones beyond our belief.
A speed record has been set. The solar Parker probe clocked doing 540,000 kilometres as it studies the sun.
Yeah, it's now the fastest probe humans have ever built. Juno was the previous record holder. Its top speed was getting about 265,000 kilometers an hour. Now, 540,000 kilometers an hour is quite fast. Obviously, still only about 0.035% the speed of light. So it puts it into perspective.
Well, a billion years later, Brad, we've witnessed not one but two extreme reactions, with two separate black holes gobbling up two separate neutron stars.
Yeah, we've talked about, black holes gobbling up other black holes. We've talked about neutron stars colliding, and this is kind of the third of the pair that people have been waiting for, and that is a black hole and a neutron star. So a neutron star is an old star. So when you get a massive star that explodes, on the inside, you condense all of the remnant matter down and you create a neutron star. So it's essentially a star made of neutrons. It's a very dense, relatively small, sometimes only 50 or so kilometers, sometimes 20 kilometers wide. And there's not much to it. That's kind of it. But we do think, and we always thought, that they could be around not only other neutron stars, as we've seen, but other black holes as well. And as you said, this was the first time we saw the collision between two of these objects, kind of confirming that, yes, you can get this combination of objects, and we can also see it at least through gravitational waves.
Brad, I know I said in the opener that this is the first time that we know of. What can I say? I'm a sci-fi guy, but that doesn't take anything away from the JPL team. They've achieved a massive milestone with Ingenuity, taking off, hovering and landing in a controlled manner.
Right. It's the first Earth thing somewhere else, if we want to be careful. It was a Martian UFO, actually, if we want to talk about it from the Martian perspective. But look, amazing. It was great to watch. It was, I think, for everything that we'll dive into in a second, it's amazing that it worked flawlessly and that everything they did worked exactly to spec. They got what they wanted. And it was amazing thing hover above the Martian surface.
We knew this was going to happen after Jeff Bezos announced he'd beat Elon Musk into orbit. Richard Branson is upping the billionaire stakes, and he's decided that he's going up on Virgin Galactic's first passenger flight in just a few days.
Yeah, look, once they got its FAA license, as we highlighted last week, I'm not surprised they quickly scheduled this, right? Just to slide in and beat it. And I think we said we wouldn't be surprised if they try to slip in a flight beforehand. And here we are, aiming for next Sunday US, Monday here in Australia. Now, obviously, weather delays and things like that can go wrong. But as of now, that's their plan. And we'll see how it goes. And it's going to be an interesting week to see how it all unfolds, especially also, I guess, how Blue Origin responds after Virgin Galactic planning on as its successful flight.
Brad, an incredible year filled with highs and lows. Chinese rocket parts burning back to Earth, crewed launches on private spacecraft, and new insights into the universe around us.
Yeah, again, when you reflect back on a whole year, it's kind of like, wow, so many things have happened. It's been so exciting, and as we were saying at the top, it really is exciting to think about what next year will happen, and even in a few years. And then when if we reflect back 3 years ago, to what did the year would like, running through those stories that we just talked about, most of them half we didn't even know would be stories. The other half we didn't think would be stories this year. And I think that's the exciting thing. So we look forward to, I guess, a busier 2022.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for an incredible year. It's time to take a few weeks off as we wrap up our 349th podcast of the year and 50th Talkin' Science. We'll see you real soon in the new year, mate. Have a good one.
Thanks. Wow.